We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit. What happened to the home of the brave? These motherfuckers, they're controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us try to be slaves. And everybody's just walking around, heading the clouds, and wanna wake up to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days. Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government releasing poison.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That's TopLobsta. And today we are joined by a man who virtually blazed the trail that Top and I follow today. And actually, he doesn't know it. He's responsible for Top and I meeting each other. I don't know if Top's forgotten that, but I certainly has it. We're massive fans on the show, and this is a huge moment for us. We're totally thrilled to have on Tony Merkel. Tony, can you please tell the audience a little bit about what it is you do and where they can find your work?
Tony, can you tell us how it feels to, like, you set up a romance in your a bromance in your chat for your app? That's what's going on. We're using it like a dating site at this point.
Is that how it happened?
Yeah,
That's exactly how it happened, dude.
He's like, "You're crazy." He's like, "Oh, I'm crazy too. Let's do a show." And we're like, "All right."
I saw Top said something crazy in the chat. I was like, I like the cut of this guy's jib. Found him on Twitter, and then the rest is history, man.
That's wild. That's wild. I did not know that. I did not know that.
That's right.
Well, I guess the confessionals memberships are serving multiple purposes these days.
That's charge more.
That's fantastic. No, I can't do that. I think in today's time and stuff, everybody else is charging more. We're going to keep it all the same, and hopefully God will just provide the rest of the way. But I gotta say that intro slaps. I like it.
Right?
Who is that? Who is that?
That's Vinny Paz, End of Days. Every time I hear it, every time, and there's actually a point where David's headphones, for some reason, he wasn't hearing that like music. And I was like, every time we come into the show, I'm like, oh, I'm ready to like flip the desk over. And he's not listening to it. I just come in super hyped every single time. Vinny Paz does it every time. I'm glad that we're like vibrating like that now.
Oh yeah, dude, that's like that East Coast vibe. I mean, I grew up in like it's called old school hip hop now. I mean, the mid 2000s and stuff. The East Coast, Philadelphia. I mean, it's just that had that hard. I love it. Anyways, yeah, I'm Tony Merkel. I host the Confessionals podcast. I run Merkel Media as well. It's an aspiring media company, and we're trying our best to venture into not just podcasts but films as well. One day, well, definitely movies. We're coming out with our first movie in the summertime this year. We already shot it. It's in production now, post-production. And I would love to do kids cartoons one day, things like that. But one thing at a time. I'm learning as I get older that I get a lot of ideas, and jumping on my ideas right away without fear got me here. But to sustain, I need to start developing plans with these dreams and ideas that I have. So I am no longer just thinking of things and executing. I am now thinking of things, planning the execution. And if it makes sense, then we execute. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Former truck driver turned podcaster full-time. And I just have fun talking about weird stuff.
Nice. I think delegation is going to be probably one of your keys to success, but you got to find people that you trust. And that's like
it's not easy.
Not easy. Yeah. It's like, I feel like I'm juggling maybe 7 different things at the same time, and you're not doing your best unless you got 2, but
yep,
is what it is.
It's when you build something up on your own, it's not easy to hand it off to anybody. And you will be a micromanager at first because it's your baby, and you don't think anybody can do what you do. And there, to a certain extent, you're right. But they can if you teach them, and you just have to be willing to do that. And I'm getting to that point where I'm understanding that in order for me to take it to another level, I need to be able to let go of certain things. I learned that with production. I haven't produced one of my podcast episodes since March of 2023. My brother came on full time. He started doing it for me. That's that. But I need to be able to let go of other things, because whenever I'm focusing on one thing, there's 5 other things that are being neglected, just because I have so much to do that whenever I focus in on one thing that I have to do, 5 other things that I have to do are being neglected at that very moment. And so
Tony, what could we do? What can we do to get you some like good people that you can delegate stuff to, so that way we can get this new podcast series that I've been waiting for like years for, man. This is one of the things.
I
right?
know. I wish I never talked about it, to be honest with you, because it's just been, it was, I never expected it to go this long. It's just been one of those things where people, I first of all didn't expect people to be so fascinated by it as I was. But then the main character of the story, I really thought he would have talked to me by now. I really did. And to this day, he knows who I am. He knows that I talk about him. He will not talk to me. He said he would talk to me when the timing's right, but I don't know when that is, and I can't wait forever. So I'm in this really weird spot, but I am working on it. So my original recording with the guy that told me about all this stuff, he's decided that he doesn't want his real name attached to this. So I'm in the process of changing his name on the original recording. We're also through the absolute amazing Nephilim AI, we are utilizing that to change voices. We are changing, we even changed the name of the book, because listen, the author requested me to not tell the name of the book, because the author has tried to divorce themselves from their own book. They've wiped it off the internet. And I'm trying to be respectful, you know. I don't think that plan is going to work, because there are certain people in this world who do know the name of the book, who I've been made aware that can't really keep it to themselves. And so it's not really my fault. I feel bad, but I'm going to do everything I can to, because here's the thing. If the world knows the name of the book, it doesn't change anything. You're not going to get the book. It's not for sale. You can't get it anywhere. Anywhere. I have one of the only copies physically in the world. And the only thing that's going to come out of it is the author's life is going to be put through hell. They've been trying to get away from it. They've moved halfway across the country to get away from it. And that's the only thing that's going to change, is that the person that is trying to stay away from it is going to be dragged into this by thousands of people. And it's a shame.
Do you think?
Well,
sorry.
As the audience kind of waits on bated breath. Well, I was gonna bounce off of that, but Top, you wanna delve a little bit further?
I was just gonna say, do you think in any way you might be responsible for some kind of manifestation of, I mean, literally the Nephilim in Miami, things like that? Like we've been saying the term Nephilim shit a lot, and since we've been saying it, it's become like I don't know, like I clipped Owen Benjamin. We just had Sam Tripoli saying it, but it's we've lost control of this stuff. So it's out there in the ether now, to the point where we were mentioning the other day on the show, you had entities in Miami, but the people that are not reporting but are talking about this, a lot of them are comfortable with saying Nephilim in Miami. Whereas 6 months ago, when you had the aliens in Las Vegas, the tall ones, right? We're calling them aliens or entities, but never Nephilim. And now that's being moved into the dialectic, or at least what people are allowing themselves to perceive. So with you, what you're doing here is, and what you might do with this next thing, what does that, do you think about that at all? Like moving
I
this
would
along?
argue, regardless of whatever, and of course, pass it to Tony in a second, but regardless of what Tony thinks from the outside looking in, yeah, dude, you move the narrative. Like the reason that we were able to get Nephilim shit into the verbal zeitgeist is because of your influence. And so whether it's by proxy or directly, you've moved the conversation in a pretty dramatic way, even on a platform that, like, it's funny because you're not there on Twitter. I wish you were. Twitter needs Tony Merkel.
Yeah.
But
I'm
the
there. I'm just very
conversation-
inactive.
Yeah, well, it's the place to be right now. It's a lot of fun. It's the wild, wild west to a certain degree. And the conversation that's being had about all these Nephilim and everything, that's your influence. So, I'm interested to hear your take on it. But I also want to say that regardless of whatever you think, you did kind of this is almost your brain baby in a way, which is very interesting to see the development of this.
That's one of the most crazy things that anybody has ever said to me. I don't know if I want that responsibility. I just no, I don't. I refuse to accept that. I listen. I've been doing this for 7 years, podcasting about all this stuff. When I first started the podcast, before I started the podcast, I had this thought, and I was like, I was trying to figure out what Bigfoot was, and I was driving tractor trailer. I had a Facebook group called Pennsylvania Sasquatch Research. There was no research going on. We were just talking Bigfoot crap. And on weekends, I would go hiking up in Pennsylvania, and I would just go look for this thing. And I was like, man, when I first started, I was like, it's not gonna be that hard. Like, if this thing's out there, I'm gonna find it. Like, it ain't gonna be that hard. I'm gonna find freaking Bigfoot. It ain't that hard. It's a big creature. I'm gonna find clues of it, and I'm gonna go track it down. I'm gonna get famous or something. I don't know. And it's hard. And the longer I looked at it, I was like, no, this thing is a physical creature. I don't want to talk about it in this woo-woo stuff. These people that are talking about, oh, Bigfoot mind speaks with me. Get out of here. Bigfoot ain't no mind speaking with you. Crazy. And then I came across, and I was raised in the church, right? But nobody talked about Nephilim in the church. And I came across this Nephilim idea, and I was like, hold on a second. Fallen angels had sex with what? Like, and I was like, and then what was the offspring? And then there's this book called Enoch, what? And what does it say in there? And then when I read about how the fallen angels not only did that with women, but they did it with all of God's creation, I was like, hold on a second. Then my gears start turning, and this may not even be accurate, but this is where my mind went. My mind was like, what if fallen angels not only had sex with women, but they had sex with like gorillas or something? What would that offspring look like? Bigfoot. And I was like, holy crap. And then I started thinking about like this idea of like, what if Bigfoot's like the Nephilim, or like a type of Nephilim, an offshoot? And then the podcasting thing came on my radar, and I was like, still in this like camp of like, Bigfoot's a physical creature we're trying to keep up with and find. And then there's like this bubbling thing beneath the surface that I was trying to sort out in my own heart and mind. And right when I started the podcast, I was like, I don't know if I should talk about this. I don't know. And then by the fourth episode, I was like, I'm going to talk about it. And, and we did our first Nephilim episode was episode 4 with my professor from college who talked about Nephilim. And he came into my quote unquote studio. It was my third bedroom in the house that became my daughter's bedroom years later. And he sat across from me of a plastic folding table with 2 microphones that I had gotten, and awful recording. But that's where it started for me. And since then, it's just been an evolution of a thought process. And I don't think my professor from college would probably agree with everything that I think today, or maybe how I view it, my leanings. But we all agree on the same thing as far as him and I go, which is the foundation is always Jesus. And from there we build. If anything that we come across takes away from who Jesus Christ is, then we don't play that. And but I don't think that the Bible tells us everything that happened throughout every moment of history. It tells us all the key ingredients to point us towards Christ. But there's a whole history of humanity and the whole history of the world that is not in the Bible. And people have a hard time grappling with that within the religious community. So I don't know how I got on that, but take it back to your thing. I don't know if I am responsible for all this stuff, but I do find it interesting how the more I talk about it, the more it seems like it's popping up. I mean, it's really weird.
Can I say this? I think the most valuable thing on your show, you explore a plethora of topics, right? Because it's basically the supernatural through the biblical lens. And that right there is, in my opinion, the most valuable thing that's come of this, at least from my personal experience. I've been a conspiracy theorist for like 16 years, maybe 17 years now. And what I find is that it's very much like developing a giant jigsaw puzzle, and you've got an island of puzzle pieces over here, and that paints a picture, and then you've got another island over here, and that paints a picture, and you spend all this time wondering how these chunks of jigsaw pieces connect to one another. And after, I guess I've been listening to your show for a couple of years now, so it would have been like after 14 or 15 years, I finally realized that, oh, the biblical lens is the glue that brings all of these chunks together. And from then on, man, it was like I was dealing with all these topics separately from one another. And it wasn't allowing my thought process to flow very effectively. I knew that things weren't as they seemed, and I knew that there was corruption that was like beyond the scope of the average human being, and that there was a really immense spiritual aspect that was integral to this entire picture. But trying to figure out how it fit together I wasn't quite there yet. And then all of a sudden, listening to your show, and that's another thing I love about your show is everybody comes to your show with a different piece piece of the puzzle, and you're discovering it in real time alongside the audience. And so I was able to have this moment, just like the audience, and almost felt like just like you, where it was like epiphanous. I was going, "Oh my God, that was the missing magnifying lens, the missing glue."
The piece that he adds is Jesus Christ right in the center of it, right? Because you came from conspiracy, I came from I grew my following in politics and art, and that's like libertarian politics, where you would take I'm a Christian, but they would take God out of it and just explore it philosophically, and really read into it without, and try to find as much logic as possible in the political realm. And none of it made any sense. Like all these books behind me that's like Rothbard, Mises, stuff like that. It would bore you. Like human action is this thick. And in the end, I realized, oh no, this is all spiritual. And it's really your show that kind of allowed me to see that, because I grew up in the church as well. And I found it kind of corny because they weren't addressing the issues, in my opinion, that were really fundamental in my life. So, and there's a place for that too in the church. There's a place for evangelism and different kinds of outreach and people who aren't ready for this kind of stuff. But for me, going to Sunday school as like a 12-year-old, I was always asking about the Bible. And I had a good Sunday school teacher who would go and read and come back to me and say like, well, this is what this meant. This is what that meant. But yeah, your show had me go back and relook at Christianity in a different light. Like from a point where I wanted nothing to do with the church. I met my wife there, played guitar there, got kicked out of the church for it, not for anything I did wrong. I told the pastor to shove it because he was stealing money. It's a whole thing.
Well, I would say you're in the right then, but hey.
Yeah,
there's a reason why I'm not a pastor, so I don't know.
Yeah, it was a whole thing, but it discouraged me from going back to the church. And even now I can't really go back to the church because some of the ones around me seem kind of like they don't really understand what's going on. And I've been looking, we had a Orthodox Christian on. I've been looking at that type of church. Maybe that one might make more sense for, where I need to go. But
well, let me say this. A couple things. One, I went through a phase where I didn't go to church during the show. I was disenfranchised and I was mad. I was mad that the church that I was going to, the long story, but I was just like, you guys literally are rejecting the supernatural aspects of God for comfortability. and for what I perceived as you don't want to scare the money away. And living in the Northeast, you guys are in Florida now, but I can tell by your accent you're from the city, probably New York.
New York. Yeah.
Yeah. But like up in that area, the culture does not leave room for supernatural. It just doesn't. And even these Pentecostal churches, which I was going to, the church that I was going to was started by the professor that went to that was teaching at my college, which was a Assemblies of God Pentecostal Bible College. But I was so disenfranchised by so many different things. I was like, I'm done. I can grow spiritually on my own, and I don't need y'all. And I was doing great until I realized that I needed that Christian fellowship in my life. And I started seeing, because anybody who's honest with himself will see it. I saw it was gradual, but it was a decline in my health spiritually, because the only people I was associating with were people who were not claiming Christ. And it took a burden on me. So I say that just to say, as the guest on your show, I encourage you to find a church. Don't give up. But I also think it's really interesting what you guys are saying, because over the years, people hear how the show goes, and trust me, if you think it, I've read it in an email to me. People will say, I wish you would have said this. I wish you would have told this person that. Why did you let them say all that stuff? I lead people to the water. I don't force them to drink. And when you guys are saying how you guys came to this understanding from your different backgrounds and stuff, it's literally music to my ears, because that's the goal. That's the goal for me. I'm not interested in debating people. I'm not interested in trying to publicly humiliate people and prove to them that I'm right and they're wrong. I believe that just through open discord and just a conversation, you let the cards fall where they may, and the truth will show itself. And I think that when people look into these different topics, whether it's coming from political angle or a spiritual angle or paranormal angle or whatever, conspiracy angle, you do get to a point where to marry everything together, you're just like, what's that glue piece? And for me, I've found that it is the spiritual aspect of it, the Bible, the God aspect. When you start looking into it, and you're like, oh, well, that makes sense why this is over here then, and that's over there. And all of a sudden things start coming together. And it's funny because I have people in my real life, not my online life, but my real life, who will say things like I wish so-and-so would just come to Christ, because everything they're saying is right, but they just don't see why they believe what they believe, because they don't give God and the Bible any kind of credence. And that kind of attitude is what I get reciprocated to me in emails a lot of times. Why didn't you just say? And it's like, I'm not going to sacrifice somebody's eternity at the altar of your entertainment. Your entertainment of the I got you isn't worth me trying to prove somebody wrong in front of tens of thousands of people. I wish I could say hundreds of thousands, but I could say tens of thousands of people.
Soon.
I mean, let's put it this way. In the 7-day period, over 100,000 people listen to my podcast. And so that's a lot of people. And I'm not going to have people coming on my show and their only interaction with me was a guy who's overzealous trying to get his point across that Jesus is the only way, which is what I believe. And what's that going to accomplish?
Here's the thing, Tony. You've done a wonderful job. Like, I've watched a lot of Christian media. Like, my mom is, big in the church. She lives on my property over here and always has some kind of Christian movie or something on. And the overall theme of Christian movies and most music is that it's corny. And why is that? Because it's going to sound crazy, but like, they're putting Jesus right in your face, right? So instead of it being about the art, it's about Jesus. And that's great. It should be, but it doesn't move people. It has to be like this message. Like, your show is about Jesus Christ. I don't care what you want to say. In the end of the day, when you compile all these episodes and you kind of say, what's Tony talking about? He's talking about Jesus Christ the whole time, but you're not saying it. It's implied. So the audience that you're reaching is bigger. And it's also this kind of like underlying, it's like, watch a couple of episodes, get comfortable here. And then once they're comfortable, they're like, they put it together themselves. Whereas if you were obvious with it, I probably would have turned it off, because then it seems like, all right, this is something, what is this? Like, there's an agenda here, you know?
Oh, it's almost like, it's like, what's better, to dress in a Jesus t-shirt or to have Jesus in your heart, right? And it's like, well, that's the show. The show isn't wearing a Jesus shirt. It's at the heart of the show.
I mean, I appreciate that, guys. I really do. I just I just don't want to let God down, man. Like, it's one of my biggest fears with doing this show for the past 7 years, that I'm misstepping somewhere and I'm out of place, you know? And so I just, I've had conversations with people off air that were guests, you know, like, people assume that, hey, the recording's over, so it must have been done. No. Like, I mean, more so these days than not, because I am busy and I'm running around. But like, up until like the last year and a half, 2 years, I mean, I was notorious. My wife was mad at me all the time because I have a 3:00 interview and we connect at 3. We don't start till 4, and I'm getting off at 8:00 at night because I was just talking. And she's like, "You're like, it's part of being an extrovert, you know." But the podcast was only an hour. There was a lot of conversation, right? And I just believe that those conversations deserve to be had in private, where I could really convey to the person, so they understand that they're not sitting there while I'm talking thinking something else, like, this guy's doing a show right now. Like, I want you to understand, this is how I feel. Let's talk about it, you know? If it was there. I mean, sometimes the conversation is not there to be had, and that's fine with me too. Yeah, as far as the way I approach things and stuff, it's just, I am who I am. The conversation will be had when it's relevant, when it comes up. Over the years, it's come up more and more, because when you have the host as an outward spoken Christian, I'm not ashamed of that, and I will talk about it. There's other Christians in the world that have weird experiences they've gone through, and they feel comfortable talking to me. And so when they come on to talk about their weird experiences, they bring the God component in it. Guess what? We're going to talk about it. And so it becomes a snowball effect, and it happens. And so, I mean, I was uncomfortable with this for many years, but as time's gone on and stuff, I definitely do look at my show as a type of ministry, which is kind of crazy, because I went to Bible college, dropped out, and never thought I'd do ministry ever. But here I am, and that's how I view it. And I don't believe that the podcast is going to go anywhere unless God decides that it's my time and it's time to go away. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
That's the case for everything, right? It's like, whenever the times, but it reminds me of this guy that we were talking to, and I don't know if he might talk to you. I don't know if you guys have anything set up, but Colin is a friend. I've been talking with him for a year. I had just the TopLobsta show where I was doing it by myself at one point, like just doing interviews with people in real life about, like, they had weird experiences, like my aunt and stuff like that. And he was messaging me back then. He was like, listen, I have all this stuff going on and I want to talk about it, but I can't talk about it. And I never pushed him. I was like, listen, whenever you're ready to talk about this, let's do it. And he came maybe a month ago, and he was like, now's the time. And he came on the show and told us a story that it just, for me, I was like, I knew the story, but like hearing it from him kind of like knocked me sideways, because there's so many parallels and pieces to your show and all of these little things that were not even taken, but like his piece just fit in very nicely and kind of made me think about like about the underground spiritual battle that's happening, right? Where L.A. Marzulli might say they're assembling, they're taking people, they're doing some kind of program, they're building an army. Colin had a similar experience where he's talking to an entity, and the entity is telling him to do good things, like actually like get his life together. He came from a place where he was, divorced, down, and all of a sudden he hears a voice in this, he's working in a job that he didn't want to be at. The voice just tells him, turn around, leave, never come back. And he listens. And he continues to listen and follow the directions of this entity of what it's telling him, to the point where he's having like experiences where he's describing them as physical. I mean, David, you could probably recap some of these things better than I can.
Well, initially he does leave his job at the behest of this voice, but over time he starts to use psilocybin mushrooms to get into contact. And when I say
it would
contact,
direct him. It would say, okay, take these now, go lay down. And he'd do it.
Yeah, so he would go into the room, put an eye mask on, and his girlfriend is going, "What the hell are you doing?" And she's not using mushrooms. This is just something he's doing at the behest of, these voices. He said initially it would show itself like images and flashcards in his mind. But over extended mushroom use, these things came through as actual voices. And pretty reliably, he would communicate with something that he would describe as like a man with blue skin. There was also an event where there was somewhat of a clinical setting, and there was two bald men with beards that looked like doctors who were.
Well, that one's interesting because so the entity would tell him, all right, take the mushrooms, see me in the room, right? This time he hadn't taken mushrooms for a while, and the entity kind of just tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, take the mushrooms, I'm meeting you in the room. He did it. He said he just went on a mushroom trip. Nothing happened. The next day, he's sober, lays down, and this experience in the clinical setting was almost like, he describes it like an abduction scene that happened. And, men in white coats they have him on a table or something, and they're telling him like, you consented to this. They're saying that they're upgrading him. And that's like
upgrading him for a war.
Yeah, for whatever he consented to. Because the entity that he was talking to initially seemed to be preparing him for a war. Like he's like, you have to get in physical shape. You have to, change your diet. You've got to do this. The entity actually sent him to church, which is bizarre to me. Like, I don't know where to put that. I know when people speak with entities, it's generally a negative experience, or at least will be a negative experience leading to one, right? They're setting up your disaster. Why would you set this guy up to be in good physical shape? Why would you send him to church? Why would you have his mind sharper than it was before? And his mind has gotten sharper, because I have DMs with him throughout like a year where I could tell that the guy was kind of like teetering, and now he seems more coherent, like he actually understands what's going on. I don't know where to put this stuff.
Yeah, because typically, I've actually heard someone on your show, Tony, mention Dr. Jerry Marzinski, who I definitely think you should reach out to. Clinical psychologist in the field for 35 years, dealing with schizophrenia directly. So in the institutions, and then in the prisons once they shut down the institutions. And he came to the conclusion that these people that are experiencing these different voices are being influenced by demonic entities. And one of the things that he puts down to a set of patterns, he said there's 23 patterns that these things always follow. One of them is that the overall mental and physical health of the person always declines dramatically until the very end, where they're barely a shell of themselves. This is the only situation where I've heard where these things are telling him to run miles, to go to church, to eat healthier, to lift weights, all these different things. Very bizarre. I mean, I would never advocate communing with any entities. But I have to say, this far is best. Yeah, this so far, though, is best case scenario. And then ultimately, this all leads to an experience where he ends up in what he describes as a gold and marble room. And
with like a clock, like he said in the sky, there's like a clock spinning with gears, like a golden clock. I don't know what any of this is.
And he communes with what he feels like is God. He doesn't look at God. He doesn't see God, but he feels the presence of God, and then is told that they're going to have a conversation that he's not going to remember. And then the last thing he remembers is walking with God. not able to look at him, but being in the presence of him and walking with him. And so, now I believe he still has experiences, nothing as large of a scale as that, but the voices will come through now without mushroom use. So in other words, he's not even using the mushrooms anymore. He's not doing any drugs. So there's no drugs involved. There's healthy eating, there's exercise, there's going to church and pursuing a relationship with God at the behest of, I don't know,
What?
several
Well, the thing
entities.
called itself, because I did ask him, and he said one time it called itself Anu, and I was like, that's not good, because that's like the god of death in Egyptian lore, right? And he was like, oh, I don't know. I was like, you need to do some research, dude. You're just talking to this stuff all willy nilly.
Oh, yeah, that's yeah. If any, just PSA, I guess. If entities are talking to you, look them up. Look them up. Don't take their word for it. Look them up. And also, don't trust everything you hear in your head. So it's one of those things where it's interesting, right? So it sounds like what you guys are saying is that there's it's like a double-sided coin with this guy. It's like some of it you're like, oh, it does sound pretty, and the other things you're just like, I don't know about that. Well,
if I didn't have a good base, I would say, oh, this sounds great. But because I do understand that, go ahead, Tony. I'll tell you what I think after. Yeah,
I don't really know what to think per se. I'd be interested in talking to the guy. If I don't. Did you say he reached out to me, or?
I think you guys
yeah,
are
I think
already
so.
set up. Yeah, so we
Okay,
spoiled
cool.
it for you.
No, it's fine. I'll forget. Don't worry. So, I forget what I was going to say, but no, I think that people need to just be careful with who they're talking to, and says the guy who prays to God, who can't even see him. I know, but there's a lot of this new age movement stuff happening and going on right now, and I was introduced to the new age through my show. I didn't know what the new age was until I started talking to people who were talking about the new age. And when I remember when I first started hearing about it, and they're talking about Jesus, I was like, oh, this is Jesus fluffy bunnies. I love this. This is nice. And then I started learning more about it, and I started talking to people who came out of the new age, and the process of coming out of new age can be a very violent one, a very scary one, traumatizing one. And so with that in mind, when I hear entities talking to people, and it's a double-sided coin, it's like some of it's pretty decent and some of it's kind of questionable. If anything's kind of questionable, it's probably not from God. And so there's real manipulation tactics, and just because it feels good to you doesn't mean it is good. And that's just a lie of the culture of the day. Like we live in a society where what feels good to you, what's true to you, it doesn't matter. Nobody like it shouldn't matter to you what feels good to you. It's what is right, what is wrong, what is truth, not what is true to you. What is actual truth? And I think that's why we have a lot of people running around confused these days, is because we were raised in a culture that is just been, just do what feels good to you. No, that's how this all this stuff starts. And it's we live in a perfect time to have this kind of stuff permeate throughout culture. People are going to absolutely be communicating with these entities. And because they're already preconditioned to do what feels good, it's such a layup. It's such a layup. Just start like these entities have been around you since day one, and you're not the first human they've interacted with, and they've been around you since day one. They know what makes you tick. They know what makes you feel good, and they know exactly how to get you to do what they want you to do. They're going to get you doing the things that make you feel good, and they may not always be anti-God. It may not always be against God's will, but they're going to get you just by that simple formula, which has been just teed up with our culture of just do what makes you feel good. So, yeah, I don't know.
Tony, can I interject for a second? I
Yeah.
want to shout out to Adriano Bear in the chat, or I'm sorry, Optimistic Bear. Adriano says, my mom is caught up in that Christ consciousness, mother, father, God stuff. And it reminds me immediately. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it. Don't worry, it's not a spoiler because you're going to waste your time if you do watch it. But there is a sort of a cult show on, not occult, a cult show on Netflix. And the story goes something about this woman who believes that she is Mother God. And based off of this premise, she starts to do all these charismatic videos online, amass a following. She does a bunch of stuff with crystals. She's drinking colloidal silver. And next thing you know, all of these new age folks from all over the country start to travel from afar and gather around her. And then they start to live stream their everyday happenings. And it's pretty uneventful, but because the new age is so appealing, and I think what's appealing about it is the new age is structured in such a way to sell you the same lie that the serpent sold Adam and Eve in the garden, or Eve in the garden. And that lie is you can be as God, you can ascend, you can unlock powers, you can be more than what you are through these new age, techniques. And so these people who are attracted to this idea, they come from afar, they gather around her, and it turns out that she needs an incredible amount of alcohol to deal with the inundation of spirits that she's getting. Now, to the viewer, you go, this is a crazy person. But to a crazy person like myself, I go,
she's drinking
no.
spirits to contact spirits.
She's literally in communication with spirits. I do not doubt this at all. But much like the Marzinski angle, she is just falling apart over time. She's turning blue because she's drinking colloidal silver, like at scale, in mass, like so much colloidal silver. And her body is like decomposing in real time because she's dying of alcohol related disease, liver failure and things like that. And these people, it's amazing the loop they get stuck in. They see her dying and they go, it's because her physical form cannot take the grand spirit that is within her. Mother God's spirit, that's what they're saying, is so immense that the expiring of the physical form is increased exponentially to anybody who is her avatar. And so you're watching these people in the real time. But I think that is at the core of the New Age movement, is taking people who, and I don't know what to say about her, but she might have been, sometimes these spirits, they do attack people who might be seeking a relationship with God. I believe that the enemy doesn't attack people who are like not paying attention, because you don't have to. It doesn't even matter. But people who are engaged in spiritual warfare, but who are standing on the field, they recognize that they're in it, but they don't know where to go. That is appealing to them. And so, she could have started off with the best of intentions, but ultimately she sold this false bill of goods that all people in the New Age movement are being sold, which is this idea of spiritual ascension, that you can be as God, you can be like gods, like demigods, like, whatever the idea is that they're selling these people. You just need to go through these practices, these occulted practices, and unlock various aspects. And ultimately, that is something that I've seen, because after that conversation with Colin, we did receive several other stories from other people. And there is always this common thread of, well, these entities want to unlock something in me, to upgrade me, to allow me to, access powers that are subdued. And, it's like, well, what's going on? Do you have powers that need to be unlocked, or are you being augmented by deceptive spirits?
Yeah, I err on the side of caution, and I stay away from that stuff. That's just how it is. First of all, I didn't realize we were live till just now when you said the comments. Like, wait, comments? And I clicked. I was like, oh, as soon as I saw the comments, I was like, get away from it. I don't want to read the comments. It's going to distract me. It'll distract me. So I apologize, people who may be commenting and expecting me to read a comment. I can't read it, or else
Tony, if we treat our audience completely different than you, I don't respect any of those people. Don't look at them. Don't answer them. They don't deserve it. Talk to us.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I mean, I get sidetracked enough. I don't need to have the scroll of commenting.
What I wanted to say about both of your points there was that again, like I came up in this like weird political realm where it was called postmodernism, right? where they would argue politically to no ends, that there is no right or wrong, and things are just gray areas, constant gray areas. And the more you look into that, the more you realize, like, no, it's pretty black and white. And whether it be spiritually, religiously, in your personal life, I feel like I personally have been. I'm like, I'm just going to take a hard stance on something, and say that that's what I'm doing. Because if you're wishy-washy, you're going to go nowhere. So it's like this is either right or wrong, and that's how the current day church ends up with pastors in rainbow robes and God and Jewish tunnels. Who knows what's going on? At some point, somebody compromised, and then you get down this hill of like, well, you can't even look back now. Where did I start? Yeah. That's the world today.
Listen, I mean, nobody wants to be wrong, right? But if you believe you're right, then I mean, listen, I've just gotten grumpier as I've gotten older, and I've just got to the point where I just don't care anymore. I'm going to say what I believe and what I think. And if I'm just going to be that grumpy old man in the room, you could say the most eloquent argument to me as to why I'm wrong and you're right. If it just doesn't line up with what I believe, I'm just be like, no, I don't believe you, and I don't agree with that. You're wrong. But no, I don't care. I don't care. And I just got to that point now because I'm not the best person I'm not good at debating. I'm not. I just know I have lived experiences that tell me that define how I believe. And so I just kind of, I don't know, guys. We just live in a really weird world, and you just kind of get to the point where you have to have a backbone, and you just have to stand up and for what's right and wrong, and just call a spade, and not worry about who's going to like it and who doesn't like it. I crossed this bridge about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I'd say. I just got to the point where I consciously made a decision. I was just like, you know what? If me talking about God sinks this ship, then I'm just going to be poor. I don't care. And that's just how I feel. And I say it a lot because that's literally how I feel. And I want everybody to know how I feel about it. If you think you saying to me, I'm never listening to your show again because you talk about God too much, that's a threat to me. It's not a threat to me. What you're doing is you're telling me if you get enough people on your side, I get to go live peacefully with my family and not have to deal with the public ever again. That sounds really nice at times. That sounds real nice at times.
Did COVID do this to you? Because the same thing happened at the same time to me, where I've decided no, and now I could even justify it verbally better. But like the idea of getting these upgrades or letting the vampire in, it's all about consent, right? Mm-hmm. So when someone does want to argue or debate me, they're like, debate me, and I say debate is fake and gay. No, and then I send them away, or I block them. Or I just tell them straight up no. But I'm not nice about it. Like Tony probably does it so much nicer than I do. Well, I'm quite mean, but go away. I think what I think, you're wrong.
So here's the thing. So I don't know if we were live or if we were doing this off air, but I said how, I came up in podcasting in a different era. So when I came up in podcasting, when I started out and stuff, you had to be conscious of what you're saying, because there's a very limited people who were actually even listening to podcasts to begin with. And you had to just kind of draw the lines as to where you wanted to cross and not cross, right? And I kind of dug myself in a hole in a sense, because people, what you just said, they will sometimes think that they can say whatever they want to me, in the sense that almost like I'm a pushover. I'm one of the nastiest people you'll ever meet. I am one of the nastiest people you will ever meet. I just have a lot of self-discipline. And anybody who wants to check that can just ask my wife, my parents, my siblings, people who know me. Like nobody will dare to say the things to me in my face that people say to me online. They think they can say certain things. I'm telling you, I'm not a nice person. So I just when it comes to this stuff, I don't know. I go about it a different way. I don't know if it was COVID that did it for me. I think COVID certainly did do something to me. I think the COVID thing combined with being dad is what did it for me. Um, I don't I don't know if I would be as staunch on certain things as far as like I don't care what you kind of say kind of thing if it wasn't for the fact that I have the kids now. I'm very aware that one day I'm going to die and I'm still going to be here at the same time. And I do not want to die one day and not and have left something on the table that I could have done to better, possibly better my kids' future, you know? And so when COVID happened, I think that really became a magnified thing in my life. And I think I remember sitting at the house and COVID was happening, and I it was December of 2019. I saw things happening in China, and I was going to work, and I was telling the guys, I was like, "Hey, there's something happening. And I think we should, be aware of what's going on." And they're like, "Oh, you're crazy conspiracy guy." And and then everything happened the next year in the beginning of the year, and work. I was driving tractor trailer. It slowed down to nothing. There's nothing to deliver. Nobody was shipping anything, and so I was
Dude,
making
I was driving tractor trailer in New York City too.
really.
And yeah, for the MTA though. So I was what did I forget what they called me, like special work person or whatever. I was allowed to work while everyone else at home. I got from Brooklyn to the city in 25 minutes. The tractor trailer full of rails. That takes an hour and a half. It was wonderful, but yeah, it was bizarre. It was like I Am Legend stuff driving through.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Weird.
very. It was when everything shut down. I remember driving because I took a layoff because I was podcasting, making money doing that. So I figured some of these guys don't have a side gig. A lot of them don't. So let them work, and drive around empty trailers. Um, but when I was coming out of Philly and stuff, the same thing. Like going back to my terminal, I mean, record times, and it's just everything was dead. Very eerie. I remember sitting at home on my layoff though, and I don't remember who she was, but I think she was out of Chicago, and she was like, uh, when somebody dies in a car accident and they had COVID in their system, it counts as a COVID death. When that happened, it wasn't me being like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I knew this was happening." But it was them for the first time I was able to look at it and be like, "Oh, you're actually saying it out loud now." And that's when I was like, "Okay, all gloves are off." If you're outright doing this and you're saying it out loud, I no longer have to sit here and wonder if I'm just reading it wrong or if I'm the crazy one. You're saying it out loud now. And now there are going to be guys like me who do have the balls to just push back. Like,
Yes.
I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, I tell my wife probably once a month, one day I'm going to be in jail. They're going to put me in jail one day. It's just going to happen. It's getting to that point now. It's going to get to the point where whether it's something I've said in the past or I checked the wrong box on something and they're going to put me in jail for it. And I'm okay with it. But
Yeah.
I'm not okay with staying outside jail because I'm a coward and have to look at my son in the eyes trying to raise him as a man in this world, knowing that
Well,
his dad's a coward.
Tony, those people are going to be the first ones put up against the wall. The ones that knew better but follow the narrative. If you look historically at like communist China when they use the red shirts, I mean they use the brown shirts to kind of like funnel the people that were dissidents. They were telling on them, right? The first ones when it came to like we're going to cull half the population, they took those idiots and then they got the extremists. But it was a little harder to get the extremists because we already kind of knew what you were doing. So we're like, I bought 10 acres in Florida and I boogied out of New York after they told me we might put you in camps if there was some kind of law floated. And I was like, yeah, no, put my house for sale. My wife was like, what the hell did you do? I said, yeah, no, it's on Zillow. And when somebody buys it, we're out. And she was like, that's crazy. I was like, sit down for a second. Let me show you some news articles. What they're saying out in the open, right? And politically, that drove me crazy because I'm like, oh my God, there has to be a solution. Maybe the Libertarian Party, maybe Republican is. It's like, nah, No, dude, it's all Nephilim shit, man.
Yeah.
These
No, yeah,
people
because
are.
something is coming. That's what we've hit the part of the story where this is what's going to happen, and there's no stopping it. I had the
Yeah.
exact same experience, and I was completely blessed that my wife, when she met me, knew I was out of my mind, but couldn't necessarily like debate me. You know, she was like, "Well, I don't know, dude's got some good points," and that was 16 years ago. And so when this started happening, I was like, "No, don't. We're not taking any shots. No, no, no. We're not doing any of that." And then ultimately, when things got real crazy, it was like, yeah, let's go. Let's leave New Jersey because New Jersey is going to, unfortunately, New Jersey and New York, they're going to be some of the first places that get hit the hardest when it comes to these things. And also, you don't want to be in a crowded cityscape
Yeah.
when shit really hits the fan. But you
Yeah.
know, I agree with that comment. Right? It was a paradigm shift,
We
and
were
I think that
talking.
was like,
We were talking with Mark Claire the other day about portals, but not necessarily the portals that you're talking about. But I just called it a portal because it's like a lateral portal, right? So I'm here apolitical, and then the next thing I'm like, let me look into this debate with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. That must be crazy. And then all of a sudden, you're kind of like stepping through these portals laterally. COVID was a big one. That one, a lot of people stepped through. You can't step back from that. Once
Yeah.
you open your eyes, and then there's so many more, all the way to.
well, it's insane that some people never step through. They're still there. They're still wearing their masks. I
Yeah.
mean, I see it. I saw it in Florida yesterday in Walmart, and I'm going, what's going on? I thought something was happening again. I was like, am I just not paying attention to the times? Like, why are there
Dude,
people in Walmart with masks?
There's a lady that I know on Facebook. I'm not going to say her name, but she's boosted up to the max, had like 3 miscarriages, doesn't know why. And I'm just like, scroll my feed. I even stopped posting to Facebook. I was like, you guys don't deserve this. This is pearl to, like swine to pearl to swines. Why would I even talk to you? I told you, you didn't listen. I'm out. We're done. Now I have to focus on like, how do I keep my family going when things get really stupid?
Yep.
And I'm trying my best, but
And that's the thing. Like, we're in new territory that our families, our parents, our grandparents, as far as I can think, haven't had to cross. Like a government that's outright in America, outright against you. And how do you react to that? We all reacted the same way. We all got out and ran. I did the same thing. I mean, I'm the guest here, so I don't know if your audience knows. I lived in Philadelphia, and I said to all my family, I said, this is going to get to a point where we're leaving. And then it got to that point where actually it got to the point where everybody was like, oh, things are opening up again. This is nice. I'm like, that's a bad sign. Actually, we're out. I put the house up for sale. Literally it was Christmas Day, the evening of Christmas Day. Everybody went home, and I looked at my wife. I said, you ready to move to Tennessee? She said, yep. And by April we were in Tennessee, and
that's gangster.
We live in East Tennessee. And I don't have 10 acres, but I'm aspiring to have 10 acres one day. And I have a farm, a little tiny farm, and pigs and chickens and things like that. But I'm doing what I can to, and I don't think anybody's ever totally prepared for that, the end of the world situation. But we're trying, and we're making friends and networking, and hopefully, God willing, tomorrow I'll have time to get to a guy's house over here who he's processing sheep. So I'm going to learn how to process sheep. And then in March, I'm processing my pigs. I'm going to learn how to process pigs. I want to learn how to do this stuff and take care of myself and my family.
The key is you got to start with the anus. You'll learn.
Key to most things. I think that this is a perfect segue into sort of the meat of what I want to talk about. I don't know how much longer we have you, Tony, so feel free to tell us to kick rocks. But we're talking about preparedness. We're talking about making these shifts to do what we need to for our families. And you alluded there that you don't know if anybody's ever really prepared. But if you're of the same mind as us, you're looking at something that you need to be prepared for that's like several steps down the road. Whether it's societal collapse or whatever, that's one thing. But I mean, fans of the show know how strange we get. I mean, literally, it's Nephilim Death Squad. And we're of the contention that at some point, these things are going to become a reality. Now, we were sort of and we were sort of faced with that for this brief moment with the Miami situation, although I'm not too sure exactly what that is. I think the most significant thing to come out of the Miami situation.
I've got some information about that I'm sure Tony hasn't heard because we only said it here. My cousin works in South Florida. He knows people that do work in that area, he's a firefighter. And one of the things that you notice right away, I was in fire protection and management, so I noticed, like, I walk into a room, I'm looking for all the exits, and I notice all the codes because I'm an idiot. But as you know, when you're in professions like this, you notice weird things. And he says, 100 cop cars, not one emergency ambulance, not one firefighter. These things show up in tandem every single time. If there's an incident, somebody probably got hurt, they might need fire every single time. When you look at the video, that's not the case. So I said, well, what do you make of that? And he's like, to me, he said it looked like what did he say? He said it looked like an operation. And it kind of did. It looked like a closed, like whatever's going on there. That's why we don't have video. That's why, you have on the ground testimony, but most of the video is from people that are living in the apartments.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. So this was shut off. What happened there? I'm not saying it's not like, actual entities or whatever, but something happened. They shut it off. Something happened in that mall. Maybe it was a portal that opened up. Maybe they knew, like they can tell, like there's some kind of frequencies or vibrations. They're like, yo, shut it down, get here and close down this system because we don't know what's coming through. Something happened there. But yeah, our government knew about it, and our government does know about this stuff. That's another like mass drop where like Chuck Schumer's just like, should we tell them about the aliens yet? It was like, what? Bro, not talking about taxes?
Then all of a sudden they're doing the kind of heart. No, don't talk about that.
And what do we just had? Tucker Carlson and Roseanne are on TV talking about the Nephilim. Then Tucker's on stage at whatever that event is, and he's talking about the dark spiritual aspect of these alien entities. And it's like we're moving towards. You want to talk about a paradigm shift, right? And the way of COVID was one. Get ready to have the shit jarred out of you. We're going through another portal, guys, and it's going to shake up a lot of people. And a lot of us will be sitting on the sidelines going, I told you so. And I don't know what good that's really going to do, but this all leads to something, in my opinion, very physical. And Tony, I know you've had interactions with guests who share their testimonies on your show who very much align with the story that we told earlier about Colin. And like I said, we've got a few more stories like that. And all these things kind of line up, right? It seems like someone, or maybe not just one entity, but within the spiritual realm, there is a recruitment process happening.
Oh, yeah.
And this recruitment process is for an impending war. And there are two definitive sides, but it does seem like from what we've learned that there might be some dissenting sides within the darker aspect of things. We actually had it explained to us in a really interesting way. Of course, yeah, it's chaos.
33% of the angels followed Lucifer from heaven in this rebellion, and then they get down and God's like, can't come back. To think that these angels don't have like a brain of their own, or these fallen to be like, this guy lied to us, screw this guy, I'm doing my own thing. Maybe some try to get back, like as the book says, try to get back in the good graces, but it's not one side. Like Scott Horton, I always reference him, the great Scott Horton. He wrote a book on the war in Afghanistan. It's a 20-year war. That's it. 20 years on our side and 50 if you go back to the Russians. And the players in this war and the motives and everything going on, it's endless. He's up to the third compendium of this book now, where I'm just like, I don't even care anymore, because it's like, who can keep track? This spiritual war has been going on since before. Since probably before Adam. I'm not sure where to put where they fell.
Yeah.
Did they fall before Adam? Were there people before? You think so?
Yeah, I think they fell before Adam. I don't know if there was people before, but there might have been another. I don't know. Like that's Joel Thomas territory for me. Like I'll call my buddy Joel and I'll be like, yo, bro, like break this down for me because my brain hurts. But no, I mean, yeah, I think that there was a fall before Adam, I believe. And yeah, I think that they're rebellious in nature. Why would they ever why would they like yeah, it's like you take all right, let's take I don't know why I'm thinking about this like this, and I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but you go to like all the federal prisons and you take the number one hooper in every federal prison and you put them on the same team and you tell me they're all gonna submit to one guy as the best player on the team.
Dude, it's libertarianism. So libertarians are by default don't trust the government, right? Then you take 100,000 of them. I've been to these meetings, all of them autistic, hilarious. But they all are so individualistic that they cannot agree and move in a direction. So you can't meaningfully even oppose like the left or the right, which they're trying to do. It's hilarious. But that's, yeah, in a sense, that's kind of what these fallen are, right? They're like, they're so individualistic. They're like literal pirates. This spiritual battle, like that's why the thing with Colin and the thing with the guy that you mentioned, they're being recruited by Baal, by Anu, by different entities, all moving in a different direction. And like, what does this look like when it manifests itself physically? Because there's going to be a final battle, right?
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't think any of us know what it's going to look like. But yeah, I mean, these beings, these entities are recruiting people, and people. It's often children, often people that are teenagers, impressionable minds. You think back when you're a kid, how impressionable you were, how you felt like you were invincible, that you were never going to be 18, you were never going to be 21, you were never going to get married. Man, I can't wait to have sex for the first time. When is that going to happen? Like everything was just forever away, right? And so you take that kind of energy and you manipulate it. And so that's my experience. Not every time, but a lot of times it was people who were children who were taken into a realm, often to start in the dream state. And it was one of those things where it was so vivid. It felt more real than what this feels. And and an entity appears to them, and there's a lot of similarities in my side of things where people, not every time, but I've heard it enough, the idea of like walking through a tunnel or a cave system, that is a common thing. But an entity, often dressed in black, not always, but often dressed in black, will be there and basically recruiting you, saying, "I want you to work for me, and you can have this, that, and the other, if you accept. And if you do not accept, you just go back to where you came from," kind of thing. But if you do accept, that's where the ride begins. And I there was a guy who there's a guy that I mentioned, you guys have heard me mention, that I would love to talk with one day.
Ron.
Yeah, Ron.
Ron. Great name.
Yeah. Um, I I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I know where he lives. I've thought about. I've hit him up on social media. I know him. He knows me. I know him, kind of thing. He just won't.
Stand down in his front lawn with
You
a boom
can't.
box
I-
and just
Yeah,
can't
I guess
do it.
let me put it this way. I know the city he lives in. I don't know his address. If
You can't do it, man. Colin, I'm telling you, Colin, the same thing. I was like, let's talk. Come on my show when it was just the Top Lobster show. And I don't even think I'd met David. And he was like, they're telling me not to. They're saying don't speak. And for some reason, he's like, now's the time. Spoke with us. And actually now I'm texting. I'm like, hey, how's everything going? He's experiencing like paranormal things, but like poltergeist stuff, like lights, stuff moving over, small, like weird things like that. And I'm like, that's not good, dude. So it's, if they can't, they can't. Literally is what I'm getting from it. Like whatever they're in
That's the
commune
same
with.
thing though that Jerry Marzinski said. Jerry Marzinski said that the voices did not like it when you address them or talk to them or ask the victim about what are the voices saying, and the victim would say they don't want me to even talk about this. And then over time, eventually, he had an experience where it was like, hey, they want to talk to you.
That
So-
experience
And
was
that's when-
crazy.
Yeah.
So I when you mentioned Jerry, I pulled his website up just so I can remember to reach out to him again, because I had this habit where I'll pull people up on the browser while they're talking on an interview just so I remember to do it later, and then that tab stays open on the computer for like a month, and then it winds up getting closed for some reason, and I forget. So hopefully I can email him, but there's like 2 or 3 other people I'm supposed to be emailing the last few days. I haven't done it yet, but
Do it,
I
dude.
know, right?
His
I will.
story with the
Marzinski, yeah.
with that specific man, he had the schizophrenic dude sit down and read, like same thing we're confronted with now. There's 2 of you in there. He had him read a passage about possibly these voices are something completely different. And the guy read it, he said blanked out, there was like some kind of actual paranormal stuff, like he described it as like a static electric sound from the back of his ear that traveled across the walls. He followed it into a garbage can. Turns out nothing in there. The guy snaps out of his like zombiness, looks at him and just goes, "I gotta go." And he says, "You should go. Please go." So the guy leaves. Comes back a couple months later or something when he finally had the nerve to call him back in his office, and he was like, "Come in." He said the guy looks better. He took his advice. He's now addressing the entities as something not himself. And he goes, "Oh, wow, interesting." And he recaps what happened. He says, did you, when you were here, did you hear that like electric buzzing sound going across the room?" And he goes, "Yeah, you heard that?" And he goes, "Yeah. Well, what the hell was it?" And the guy says, "Those are the voices. Usually you're not supposed to hear that." So now he's like, "Huh, that's crazy. What did they say?" And the guy looks him right in the eyes and he says, "They said to go out of here, get a shank and stick it in your guts." And Jerry just like, "Why didn't you do it?" And he said, "I couldn't find one and no one would give it to me." Wow. That was it. Yeah. So you're interfering with their way of life. There's another story he tells where they said like the entities want to talk to you and they said, "You have no right to interfere with our way of life," because he was in a mental hospital. Yeah.
No right. Right? That idea of like powers and principalities, you have no right to interfere with our way of life. Yes.
There are laws. There's rules to this stuff. Like we don't know them, but they know the rules inherently. Yes. One of them is definitely consent. The other ones.
Oh yeah. Consent's a big one. But yeah, there's rules of engagement for sure. And I don't know if everybody grasps that at all times. That's really interesting. That's really interesting that he heard that, and that's what the whole thing. Oh man.
Oh, it's interesting because it's like they allowed him. It started off with like they want to talk to you, and then it ends with him actually hearing this crackling electric sound, and it's like they control whether or not you hear them.
It manifests itself as almost, he described it as an electric crackling sound. So electricity, frequency, energy, things that Tesla was messing with. You know, it's like, there's a lot, all that stuff is intermingled, especially the frequency. I'm a guitarist here. So I've been like, I drive you down the rabbit hole with what I think about frequency and all that kind of stuff like that. But that part is the most interesting. And the part that he couldn't perceive it as words, but the guy was like ready to stab him in the guts because that crackling sounded to him so convincing enough to go out there and do that. Go out and then come back. It's that bugs me out, man.
This is making me think about this one guy I was in communication with. He somehow found out what I was doing, and he contacted me and said that he had a friend who he grew up with who was just like Ron. And so we started, I texted him and we scheduled a time for me to call him just to talk on the phone. And usually I don't talk to anybody without recording. If it's not recorded, we're not talking on the phone. We're not just chit chatting. One, I don't have time. And two, that's valuable information the world will never be able to hear and I will forget. So I have to be able to record just for my own brain. But with this guy, I was like, I just want to talk to him. And he was at work. It was like 9 o'clock at night when I called him. I hear him get off the floor. It was like a machine shop or something. And literally within like, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute of this phone call, this man I've never met before in my entire life is just sobbing on the phone to the point of like, you know how like kids, when they cry so hysterically, they hiccup, they're like, like that. Yeah. That's what he was doing on the phone with me. And all I did was start talking about the stuff, asking him, you know, what do you know? What's what? And he started talking, and all of a sudden it just started coming out, and he started crying. And he's like, I've never told my wife any of this. And I'm scared that if I tell her, she's going to leave me. And, you know, this, that, and the other. And like, it was such a burden on him. But what I was able to get out of him was that a lot of people died. All the people that he was involved with through this stuff are dead for the most part. His friend is dead. And I feel like he felt a sense of responsibility towards, even though it seemed like he was a bystander in it. He even said so. But I don't know if that was accurate or not. You know, sometimes people say, "Oh, I was just a bystander," when they actually were very much participating. Um, but he was deeply affected by it, and I told him, I was like, "Listen, man, like I'm not going to tell you what to do with telling your wife and stuff. That's on you to tell your wife." I said, "I understand your hesitation, but I also understand as somebody who has had some secrets from my wife, uh, I could tell you that when you do come forward and you show your wife your dirty laundry and she chooses to love you through it, like that relationship goes to a level that you never could have imagined." And I said, "I'm not going to tell you to do that because if she doesn't love you through it, I don't want to be responsible for it." But I said to him, there is a lot of benefit to being vulnerable with the person you're married to. Um, and so him and I were trying to schedule a time to record a conversation for the show. And, you know, he canceled once, canceled twice, whatever. And the day that we were supposed to record, he texted me a long text message. And it basically was just like, since I've been talking to you, really bad things have been happening. And I will not record with you. I do not want to talk to you. I'm deleting your number and I want you to delete my number. Now, I didn't delete his number because I didn't consent to that. But um, I'm sure he deleted mine and I haven't heard from him since. I probably will text him again one day. But I don't know what happened, but for him, something happened. Something kicked up through talking with me. And I do believe that there is a realm that is starting to, I'm noticing, maybe they've been doing it for a while, but I'm starting to notice that um, it's like I feel like I've been in a very dark room, and all of a sudden the entities in that room are starting to see me, and they're starting to turn their head and look at me.
Mm.
And I don't know if that's because I'm hitting the right buttons or if I just been here long enough, they're finally getting around to my corner. But I'm noticing certain, in fact, it just happened today. I can't get into great detail because it's actually part of my rebranding that I'm doing for my show. I'm actually coming out with a new logo for my show and new website and stuff. So as members, you'll have a new website. But it's a process and I'm hoping it all works out okay. But um, basically my logo was left at the last property I investigated, and my logo is not public right now. My new logo is not public right now. And I talked to my guy Ward, who is my cameraman, and he's like the team chaplain. He's like the theologian of the team and everything. And I'm like, you know, I said, "Do you think it actually means anything?" He's like, "At this point, I think it does." He's like, I think it's getting to the point now where people or these things are seeing us. They're seeing what we're doing because we're being overt now about it.
Can you
What we're
explain
doing.
what you mean? Left there, like a sticker? What is it? What do you mean?
No, yeah, I think so it left a mark on somebody's house.
Of your logo.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot bigger of a deal than you printed it out on paper and forgot it.
Yeah.
It's like I was like, no big deal. Like people forget.
Yeah. 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 And it was the last property that we went to, private property that we went to. So yeah, I think, but we're becoming very overt. So we started out with Expedition Dogman, the first documentary, and that was the crew guys just getting together, not knowing what we had, kind of thing. And every time we get together to do something, we hammer out more details. How do we want this to be? How do we do this? And the last time we did this, we were very overt and intentional with prayer. And we are now at the point where we're like, okay, this is spiritual warfare, so bring it. And that's how we open up our investigations. This is how we did before too, but now we actually have intentional prayer in the sense that it's not like, all right, Tone, you're a team leader, let's do a prayer. Okay. And I can do that. Ward had written a prayer, and it was a very thought out prayer with every word accounted for. And he read the prayer. And I think I think we're starting to do things, in my mind, right. And I think that's why the heads are starting to turn in the other realm. And I'm here for it. I'm here
You know,
for it.
that
I
reminds
really,
me, the Orthodox Church, they told me that when you get baptized, one of the prayers that they do say is pointed and it's written and it's intentional, but part of that prayer is an exorcism.
mm,
So, and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, right? If you're gonna like be entering into this new portal, into this new realm, a new person, you might want to get that old stuff out. But it for the Pentecostal church I came from, that's not really a thing.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
You know
I'm
what's really interesting, Tony? I'm sure this is not a foreign thing to you, and I got it. The audience probably hasn't heard this, so I'm going to do a little story time real quick. Um, you're probably very familiar with this. People reach out to you, they have experiences. Suddenly, they get dialed up to 10 after they reach out to you, right? This you would probably say at this point is a normal occurrence.
yeah.
So I emailed you once, and I I haven't even told Top this actually. I might have shared a bit of the story, but I never told him about the correlation. So it was probably the night that I emailed you. If it wasn't the night, it was within a day, but it was after I emailed you to share some stories. And one night I take my dog out for a walk and it's dusk and she's a little puppy and I'm walking her down the street and suddenly I hear the neighbors, they're like arguing in a really grotesque way. They're screaming at one another and you can hear this couple like echoing through the streets. It's like mortifying. I don't like being around when people are embarrassing themselves. So, unfortunately, the puppy like is so jostled by this, she just plants it and sits down. And it's like right in front of their house, across the street, but in front of their house. So I'm like trying to get her to move and she doesn't want to go and kind of being nosy at this point too. And I can kind of hear that the wife has forgotten something and the husband is unbelievably angry about it. And they're calling each other every name under the sun. And they have to get in the car and retrace their steps to find whatever it is she forgot. So they leave in a hurry and they leave everything on. Like I can see their house. The sun's going down, but it's not fully dark. But all the lights from their house are lighting up the street. And as they're leaving, and I'm like trying to act like I didn't see them, there's like a family approaching me. And I've got a puppy and they've got a stroller and some kids. And I'm anticipating, I just moved to town, right? So I'm like, this is going to be nice. Like, this is going to be wholesome, right? I've got a puppy. They've got some kids. This is going to be a nice interaction. I'm like feeling like a family man. I just moved into my first home. And so as they're coming, I kind of turn my body away from these people as they're leaving so they don't see me. So I don't want to make eye contact with you yelling at your wife. And I noticed that as they're approaching in my peripheral vision, I can see someone standing in the actually, it wasn't even my peripheral. That's right. I remember looking over and seeing somebody standing in their garage. Um, but it was like a silhouette. And I just remember thinking, well, that's weird. I just watched them leave, but I don't know these people. Maybe more people live in the house, whatever. But anyway, here comes this family. And we have the moment, right? We hit it off. I go, "Hey folks, how you doing?" They go, "Nice night. How old's the puppy?" And in my peripheral, I see this silhouette of a man beeline for me. And you could tell when somebody's like boogieing for you. Like, and this is a totally normal situation still. So I'm like mortified. I'm thinking, dude, this guy is about to come and apologize for what I've heard. And I don't want that at all. So I start to turn my body away from him so I could really focus on it. Oh, how old's the baby? And we're still having this moment. And I could see him like speed walking up to me. And finally I turn so he's out of my sight. Cause as I'm doing this, they're also like kind of curving and so I'm turning and talking to them. They leave, we have this nice interaction, and I'm waiting for this guy to say something to me. I'm waiting for him to go like, "Hey, so sorry about what you heard." And I was gonna go like, "Oh, dude, what? You are didn't even hey, happens to the best of us. I know how it is." And he's not saying anything. So I'm now even as an extra layer of mortification because I'm like, I have to engage now. Fantastic. And I turn and nobody's there at all, which is not so bad. Now I don't have to have this interaction, right? So the puppy finishes what she's doing. I go back to the house and I get inside and I start talking to my wife and my niece and I go, "Yeah, it was crazy. Neighbors are screaming at each other. Then what happened? Well, they got in the car and they left. What did you do?" "Well, there was a family coming and I actually thought I saw one of the come out of their driveway and walk up to me, but I don't know. It was weird, and they go, "Well, what happened?" I go, "I don't know. I turned around, he wasn't there." And then my niece goes, "Yeah, that's creepy." And I go, "Huh? Yeah, I guess that is creepy." And my wife's like, "You definitely saw somebody?" I go, "Yeah, I definitely saw somebody." I knew it was the worst thing ever when I watched that dude walk towards me. I was like, I don't want what he's got for me. I don't want to have this conversation. So they convinced me that it's creepy. And not even 15 minutes later, my front door, boom, 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 boom. I open the door, nobody's there. I go, what the hell? Like we're new to the neighborhood. Like, and my door is, I'm standing in the living room. The door is right. I wish I could show you. It's right there. Like, it's not like you're on the other side of the house hearing something. I'm standing next to it. So my family kind of goes like, what the hell is that about? I don't know, dude. A couple minutes later, tap, tap, tap on the window. I'm like, I go outside. I look around the house. Now I'm kind of going into like dad mode, right? Because I've got kids and I'm in a new neighborhood and somebody's doing something really weird to my house. So I'm looking around, nobody's here. I go back inside, boom, 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 on my garage door. They're just doing different things around my house now. And I'm getting pissed because this is like absolutely bizarre. Like, I'm brand new here to this neighborhood. I just had somebody walk up to me and I've drawn a correlation already. I'm like, this is creepy as shit, man. I don't know what's going on, but this is spooky. So we have this all night, and eventually it fades, and I go to sleep. It happens on the window behind my head. I have to get up and go out in my house at night. I'm walking around my house with a gun at night for who's knocking on my window. Nobody's there. Dude, this persists for like weeks, like 2-3 weeks. And I'm going on the Nextdoor Neighbor app, and I'm trying to figure out, is anybody else having this? And people were, which was really interesting. People were having this. Some people were claiming that it was a teenagers doing something. And then other people were, but they never saw them. They would just say, like, every time I opened the door, they had already run.
It was teenagers with sticks, right?
Teenagers.
Yeah.
Teenagers
I know
with
about
sticks
those
fighting
guys.
in the mall. So when it gets really bad is there's two events. One is my niece wakes up in the morning and she says that she saw the silhouette of a man standing in her window, but like a really tall man. And you got to understand the way my niece's window is, it's like almost all the way to the ceiling. So for somebody to be almost all the way to the ceiling, that's a big ass dude. And now I'm bummed out because I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to you, but like, I brought my family to Florida and we uprooted everything and we took one of the biggest chances in the world, and now we're haunted. And this is my fault. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of responsibility for this. So my cousin and I are standing in the living room one day, and we're within arm's reach of the door, and it's nighttime, and my front porch light is on. Boom, 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 boom. And we grabbed that handle so fast, ripped it open, ran. He ran one way. I ran. You ever see Signs where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm screaming with anger? Like, he runs one way, I run the other way, and there's nothing. And we turn around, and the only thing that I see is a skittering black cloud move across my front lawn. But I'm there, and the light is on. And this is not an animal because I can see everything. I can see the leaves on my bushes. Why can't I make out what this thing is? And my cousin goes, did you see that? And I go, on the lawn? He goes, no. And he points in the distance, and there's just a shadow running across like the street. But there's not a person. It's just a shadow. It's under the street light. And there's no person.
Oh, I love this
So
story.
But no, because that's where the story ends, dude. Because that night, I'm like wielding the authority of the name of Jesus Christ all around my house. Like, and I'm very specific. I'm like, you will leave this place. I am the owner of this home. You have no authority to be here. In the name of Jesus Christ, be gone from here. Go where he wills you. Leave my family. Leave my niece. You are, not any room in this house, not my lawn. Wherever Jesus wills you is the name of the game. And that shit stopped on a dime, homie. That was it after that. Although from time to time, still, and my son will go like, why does something knock on the window sometimes? And I go, I don't know, dude. But it's like non-threatening, but it's like, you know what it specifically felt like? That permission thing. It was like this thing this is the feeling that I got. And I think the feelings go a long way, guys, when it comes to this kind of shit. And thank you, Tony. This is all your fault because I emailed you. Your feelings on the situation, they go a long way when it comes to like interpreting what's going on. That thing on the street tried me. And I hadn't like displayed authority over my home yet. I was a new homeowner. And I think before maybe there's like a ceremony we should be doing, like invoking the name of Christ and taking ownership over the home. And I hadn't done that yet. And so you're leaving like a door open, like a spiritual door open, where these things can try you because you haven't claimed this place as your own yet. And that thing was trying me. And I think honestly, I think it was like this is how I feel. Some low level weak ass shit. Like it was like knocking on me and knocking on my door, and it wasn't like a strong entity. It wasn't like I've seen some shit before.
It was the entity hood rats.
Yeah, exactly. It was the Menlo Mall. I mean, the Miami Mall kids. But I mean, when I tell you this happened like maybe a day after I emailed you, I was like, "What should I have emailed Tony?" Like I swear,
I get that all the
really,
time. I get that all the time. People, they'll email me and they're like, "Since I emailed you, stuff's been happening. I'm not doing the interview." I'm like, "All right, I'm pretty busy anyways."
Tony,
But
didn't
like,
you have a guy that had a schizophrenic girlfriend that you were supposed to do a show, and then it ended up falling through because specifically they did not want to communicate with you?
Well, I don't remember exactly how that unfolded, but I do remember I had a dream before I was supposed to interview them. Yeah, I think you're right, but I had a dream before they canceled. I think it was how it unfolded. And in the dream, I was interviewing a guy and a girl, and she started crawling through the screen. And I was reaching for my computer button to turn it off the screen, trying to stop it from happening. And I woke up yelling. My wife woke me up. And yeah, that was an interesting one because that one I'm fairly convinced she's dealing with some serious possession stuff, and I don't think he agrees with that notion.
Do
I'm
the
hearing
creepy look.
I'm hearing things. We have some weird things happen here. I think it's just because of what I do. But going to what you were saying though, I think, and I'm not perfect at this, but I think I think where we fall short is that we claim the authority, but we don't do it continually. And we're instructed to pray continually, always be in prayer. And I think if we just start making it part of our routine and doing it with the not like in the name of Jesus, like that anger aggression, but like just the passion, desire of wanting to see your family whole and left alone. If we do that more continually, those little taps may not happen, because I do think that when you pray over your home and stuff, I believe it works. But I think that it's like they keep pushing, right? So you have this big bat and you hit them out of the yard, they're just going to land and start crawling their way back. And so I think it's the continual prayer, I think, is what we need to be putting more in practice. And I'm not perfect at it. We have had things happen in the house. We had a banging situation on my house not too long ago, probably a few months ago now. And I searched my entire property. That's what I love about being in East Tennessee. I can walk around my property any time of day with an AR. My neighbors are like, "Hey, neighbor." I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" Nobody cares. My neighbor comes out and he sees me with my AR walking around my property. He's like, "You shooting?" And I was like, "No, I
Maybe."
heard." I said, I heard, and he knows what I do. So I said, "I heard something banged on my house." And he's like, "Well, I'm pretty much deaf, but my wife and kids, they heard it too." And he said, they said that it sounded like something was banging on your house. And I was like, "Yeah, that's what it sounded like." And so I was ready to shoot Bigfoot or something. I don't know, but I didn't see anything. But even before that, for me, a lot of the stuff tends to happen when I'm not home. Like, I think there's a sign there. I mean, I do exercise spiritual authority in my household significantly. And so when I'm not there, I think is where the buttons get pushed.
Same thing for me. My wife will tell me that she hears all kinds. I'll get text message. She's like, "Oh, it's super creepy here right now," and I'm like, but I don't have it when I come here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not. I don't think I've ever really been creeped out in my house. Yeah, but when I was probably here. I don't remember where I was, but my wife was putting my daughter down for a nap, and she's laying in the bed with my daughter. My son's in the living room watching TV or whatever, and um, she has her back towards the bedroom door, and she hears a whisper go, "Mommy," and she turns around to look because she thinks it's Benny, my son, and there ain't nobody in there. And so she rolls over towards my daughter and just lays there the entire nap time, holding her, napping with her. And, I don't think she really thought much of it. And then she comes out of the bedroom after nap time is over, and my son comes running over and says, "Mommy, something really scary happened when you were in there." And she's like, "What?" And he said, "I heard somebody whisper my name from the hallway," which is right where my daughter's bedroom was. And so at the same time that my wife heard somebody whisper "Mommy," my son heard somebody whisper "Benny" to him, and I wasn't there for it. And so, I went home and prayed over the house, and I have anointing oil, and I don't know if that works or not, but I have it. Pentecostal here, we just got to throw the oil around. Come on, name of Jesus.
I'll take the oil before I take the sage. People are like, burn sage. I'm like, I'm not burning the sage.
When this is over, if you have a minute, I'll tell you about something, some stuff going on. I told David.
So I've spilled my guts out on live air, and you won't do this. I get it. I get it. Not everybody's as brave as me.
That's just how he is. He's closed off.
If it was just me, I would say it, but it involves something that, not necessarily my wife, but like, her side of the family. So I'm just not gonna tell their business.
Yeah.
Honestly, I haven't even told them what I'm suspecting with the story. I haven't even told them, and I'm pretty sure that I'm spot on. My wife agrees with me, but after the show, just if you're interested, remind me. But I had told David it's a similar thing where your household will come under attack. And this was before I was doing a show or anything. It's like almost right when I moved to Florida, like life had like a downturn. Wife was sick, kids were jacked up. My son was delayed, like critically delayed in speech from, just being in New York, not seeing anyone's face. Yeah. It was horrible. And we've got it under control. We've managed it. And obviously, like, prayer is a big thing. My mom's probably watching this, and she's like, I don't talk about my spirituality with my mom. She's a Christian, but I'm saying, like, I learned how to pray in a different way now. Whereas before, I felt like I was just mimicking my dad, or you know how like they have someone has a cadence in prayer. To me, I was like, that's not really prayer. It didn't work for me. Now I just talk to God and Jesus, like kind of like I'm talking to you now. But obviously with much more respect. Just like, but I feel like for me, it's got to be a conversation, and that has helped, I think, my family get out of what was going on. And when I tell you later, you're going to understand why. It's just, I hate to leave it like that, but no, it's too important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, not everything's, trust me, I've learned over the years, not everything's for the airwaves, whether the people like it or not. There's people that'll comment, they'll be like, I hate when they say that they can't, they can't talk about it, but they bring it up. And it's like, well, you could just be left in the dark and not know that there's anything to be talked about. Like True. We can bring you to a certain edge, but there's certain lines that just can't be crossed. And I know it's candy to the ears, but maybe sometimes people do that on purpose. For me, I'm not that strategic. I just am who I am, and I just talk, and things come out. And sometimes I wish I wouldn't have said it.
My fans that know who I am know that I never do that. Like if you watch my other show, Tower Gang, it's offensive comedy to the nth degree, the most offensive comedic show. So nothing's off the table. We're talking about everything, any word that you can imagine. Nothing is taboo. I do it because I feel like it breaks down this matrix that's been built up around us. And it's almost like I have a hard time putting this show and what I do and in my personal life separate from what I do on Twitter and what I do with that show. But I feel like it's very important. Like it gives people this extra step, like, oh, they're just being real. Like I was like this in the 90s too, and then all of a sudden something happened where it's like, I can't express myself. I can't tell the truth. That's really the biggest part of it. And whether I'm being truthful with some of the awful jokes I say, it's just that I'm stepping past that line and I'm saying, come with me. This is not malicious. I don't hate people, but come with me. Let's step past this thing. Whatever they told us that we can't do, That's like, we have to break that off in order to understand what is really going on around us, because like we've been put into this like blanket state of sleep where people are watching what they do and what they say, and no one really knows what is going on.
I think it
I
takes
agree with that.
N-word.
I think it takes a special person to be able to do that. I really think it takes a special person to be able to do that, because
One of the worst people in the world here. Shout out Juana.
top don't
Unbelievable.
lie. You don't have. What's up?
No,
Juan?
we're not shouting out Juan anymore. We shout out Thomas, the paranoid American. No shout out for Juan.
But yeah, no, I think it takes a special person to kind of do that, because it takes the forward thinking, the understanding of, like, there's a destination that I'm trying to get to, and we're going to take these steps to get there, and we're going to do it intentionally, with, I imagine, as little emotion attached to it as possible. I just, for like, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. I get too rowdy. And so I can't, I can't, there's a reason why I don't even watch UFC. I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand the idea of two guys getting in a ring and trying to knock each other out and not hating each other afterwards. I'm like, that doesn't compute with me. It doesn't seem like a sport. So, and I think that it takes a special kind of person to do it. And I think we need people like that are able to do that in a strategic way. So I think that's awesome.
I think
What it
there's
is it's like there's
certain-
been this encroaching power that's like part of the battle that's coming from, you know, the negative side of all this. Is part of the control mechanism is controlling our speech, controlling our, like Top said, our ability to tell the truth.
the logos.
You can't fight that unless you do it all. So if the battle is on a verbal front, if the battle is with the things that you can and can't say, well, if you're on the side of free speech and you know, that the truth is the most important thing and you have to be able to express that, well, then how do you wield that? You wield that in the biggest FU way possible, which is,
Well,
I'm going
what
to
is-
say whatever I want and I'm not going to stop.
What is speech? Like, when you really think about it, it's the first book of the Bible. Within the first verse, God said something and it was good. It was true. That's like, this is a Jordan Peterson thing. That's where we get the TopLobsta. But it's like, if you're not saying the truth, what are you manifesting? You're maybe just nothing, maybe just crap. But for me, it's like, if I'm not saying the truth, even at my own detriment, and thank God things have worked out for me the way that they have, because it could have gone awry years ago. I got doxxed when I was just a t-shirt company and like not really even talking. But yeah, I don't know. I've just been consistently saying the truth as I see it, and people seem to like it. And it's gotten me this far to the point where I'm like, I don't know where I'm at, but I don't know where I'm going to end up. But I've gotten this far doing that, and I intend on doing the same thing. It's just like Tony has since the beginning of this episode, since the pre-chat. He's like, am I doing this right? Am I doing the right thing? Am I headed in the right direction? I'll tell you in a year.
I think there has to be an awareness of what you're able to do, who you are. Like, all right, so what you're describing, what you're doing, and what Peterson does, same idea, different ways of doing it, right? And neither one of those is something that I have a strong suit at. So I can be insulting, but when I'm insulting, I'm not doing it to make a point. I'm doing it to be insulting. I'm doing it to be extremely nasty because I do not like you. And I don't have the middle ground switch. I have a, hey, we're really cool, to I can't stand you. And so I don't cross certain lines because I know where it goes for me. And so there's certain arenas that I don't play in because it's just not good for me. And so I think that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's special people in this world who have the ability to do certain things. Like Jordan. I love Jordan. Jordan is such a high intellectual person who can speak in a way that retards like me can understand, you know, and like that's special. And the same thing with the comedy and things like that. But for me, I think I tried it a little bit when I did my radio show Rage Against Dystopia. And I quickly learned after about, I don't know, a month or two of doing a radio show that it was killing me, because the only way I could do this Rage Against Dystopia show is to find things that I was getting irate about, because like I don't have that. I don't have the ability to convey bad things without being furious about it. And I realized that's what people were coming to the show for. They wanted to hear me rant and get angry. And I was like, this isn't healthy for me. I can't do this because I'm just going to lose my mind and for everybody's enjoyment and entertainment. And so that's when I kind of
it's knowing what you're good at, right? Like, so there's varying levels of like, you're like, I can't even watch UFC. I love the UFC, but everyone is at a different spot. David keeps trying to get me to watch this Obama film. And even my mom too, like, you gotta watch it.
It's a good one.
See, for me though, Tony, I could watch guys pummel each other to death and then shake hands and understand it. I can't watch the psyop that is a movie about the psyop of the guy that created the psyop. I can't do it. It brings me down spiritually, and I know it already. Like I already dabble in this stuff all day. I'm like, I don't need to. I know I watched the live stream of the World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab. He said it there. I don't need to see it in a movie with a diversified cast. You know?
What's really interesting about you, Top, is that you got really like upset about the January 6th thing, even like watching what was happening to people, and you've told me that before.
And
cried.
It's like
I'll like seeing like knowing that these guys were about to get locked up, knowing that this was all going to be spun around on them, like that really hurt you. And like I don't know, it is interesting. You have your spots where you can't do a thing, like you can't watch Leave the World Behind. I don't know where my spots are yet, but I have noticed that about you is like there's certain things where you're totally willing to go there, and then other things you're like, no, that's poison for me, and I don't want it. And I'm like, that's really interesting. It's good to have your spots.
Tony, you haven't been on X very long, or you have, but like that bothers me. The movie on Netflix, I don't like it. I'm completely fine with having an interaction with Elon Musk about the Jews and adrenochrome, getting articles written about me. Like that is like fine, but that other thing I can't do, and I know I can't do it, so I just don't do it. Like I'm at this stage in my life where I'm like, that's what I don't do, and I don't do it.
Tony,
go
ahead, Tony.
I watched that movie right when it came out. I didn't know who was behind it, anything. I didn't even know it was coming out. It just so happened I went on Netflix while we were getting ready to wrap Santa's presents to the kids, and I was like, this looks like my vibe. And I'm watching it, I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, they're telling us what's gonna happen. I'm telling my wife, she's like wrapping presents for Santa and from Santa. And I'm like, this is revelation. This is revealing the method. This is revelation of the method. This is what they're telling us. This is what's gonna happen. And I'm like losing my mind. And she's watching it. She's like, I think you're right. I'm like, yeah. Buy more food. Get a bunker. Like I was like,
more ammunition. I feel bad for our wives.
The bunkers have been a big thing the last couple of weeks. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg building his own bunkers. Apparently, the Jews in New York already have their own bunkers. I don't have a bunker
in your yard. Let's build a bunker in your yard. It's Florida. I don't know how that works. It's like soft ground here. But look,
I don't even have a basement.
Tony, one of the craziest things, right? So Top goes through all this stuff. He'll be exposed to all these crazy things. Like he said, people writing articles about him. We're at a gathering at his house, and we're presented with a recording. And this recording is, unfortunately, it's very dark in nature. The story goes, there was some roommates, and one of them was addicted to fentanyl. And so what ends up happening is he starts going through this episode, and I don't think that the other roommate knew necessarily that he was ODing, but he can hear him in the bathroom making horrifying sounds. And so what he does is he starts to record. And as he's recording, you can tell that there is at least 3 discernible voices going on, but there's only one guy in the bathroom. At some points, they are happening at the same time, speaking over one another. As a matter of fact, and I know this is interesting because you've stumbled upon this thing recently. I believe I heard it through your show, this idea of a second set of vocal cords. So like this, that people can emit almost a different voice. And maybe I'm wrong if that was a different show, but
it might have been a different show.
That's the only that's the only thing I could think of as to how this dude was making. It was like his voice of suffering, another voice of like an antagonistic, almost feminine. Like I would liken it to like a witch, dude. Like it sounded like this, like The Exorcist when she would speak in that gravelly, like, your mother, like that kind of voice. And then this other voice that was very much like a beast, like an animal, guttural growling, no words, just and the other ones.
And they listen to this shit in my house. I said, no, we have to at least go outside of my house. I'm not listening to this inside. Outside of the door, we leave this portal, close this door, and still too close. I did not like that at all.
But I could tell, like, when I was like, let's listen to this, like, I didn't know Top well enough, but I could still pick up on, like, did he just flinch at the idea of like he didn't verbalize it, but he was like, like a little bit
Yes.
like,
I'm like,
and I was like,
"Oh,
let's
I
go
hear
on
it."
you want to go on the porch? And he's like, let's go on the porch and listen to it. And I was like, it was just my first introduction to like a dude who I'm like, this guy is in the trenches, swinging broadswords and laughing as he's covered in the blood of sissies. And like all of a
'Cause
sudden now it's
all
like, we
this
got to go on
stuff
the porch.
all this political stuff, all the Twitter stuff, this is all people and this is all stupid and it's fun, it's entertainment. The spiritual stuff is where I'm like, okay, like if you come across my Twitter or even me in real life, I'm very like, I'm gonna make jokes about everything and anything. I don't care. There's no limit. But once we get to this part, I'm like, okay, have a seat and let's really talk about what's going on here. And it kind of, I guess it takes people off guard, but it's the only thing that really matters.
Very
Thank you,
much
Tony.
off guard.
Yeah, you're the one who told us that.
Time to get serious. When the spiritual stuff hits the fan, time to get serious. Yeah, I mean, like, and that just takes I think people like us, for me, I mean, like, I don't live my life for this one. I live for the next one. So everything that I do has spiritual ramifications, good and bad. And I'm not perfect, and I do things all the time that make ripple effects in the bad direction, and it pisses me off every time I do it. But when I'm conscious in the moment to make sure I step through the portal onto the porch, that's what I'm going to do for the betterment of the spiritual beings of the people in my house and things like that. Like, I think I don't think we even comprehend the impact that we have on the kids that are underneath us. And we mess up all the time. So yeah, it's a very the spiritual side of things is so real that I guess in a way you can just look at everything else and be like, I don't care, it's all a joke. But yeah, guys, I mean, I think that we're living in some really bizarre times. I think that the Nephilim might be returning, and I don't know what that's going to look like totally, and it excites me. It gets me.
I was gonna
It gets.
say, and I'm pumped.
And I'm hype.
It's so exciting. And not in a way that like I want to meet them. It's in a way of like,
On the field of battle.
yeah, it's like, oh, this chapter's starting now. Okay, this chapter's starting now. I know where this is going, and I'm gonna be okay, where's he coming? Where is he at? Because like I'm like, okay, I know where this is going. And so that's what I mean by it's exciting, because it's just like, we've seen it in throughout the scripture. We've talked about it all these years, and we're starting to see things unfold, and it's just like, man, like you never really think it's going to happen in your lifetime, right?
Why our
And
lifetime? That sucks.
exactly, and that's the thing, like
It's
everybody
cool, but it
so
sucks.
like growing up, it's like every generation is like, oh, God's coming back in our lifetime, this, that, and the other. And in your youth, you're like, yeah, okay, everybody always says that. And now for the first time in my life, I'm like, I could see that happening, actually. I
Yeah.
could actually.
Well, you know what? They didn't have Nephilim coming through portals in
I know!
Miami Mall. I mean, we have all the good stuff. And what I have to say to the people who expected it to come all those years is, ha ha, we're
No,
the ones that get all
you
the
had
cool
it
shit.
easy. You
Yeah.
complainers.
I'm pumped. The more this goes on, the more I'm emboldened, right? The more we go down this path of like, oh my God, this is spiritual warfare. This is all biblical. I'm like, thank God. Thank God this is all biblical. Thank God that this is all real. That's the way I feel. That's every time another step is taken, I feel better about it. And you can be black-pilled and you can see all this stuff and you can get upset about the direction that the world is going. As soon as you plug in the biblical lens, you're suddenly not black-pilled anymore. You're more like, thank God.
You're at
Because
peace.
this is all real.
Well,
Exactly.
you know how it ends.
Yeah, like you're at peace.
Exactly.
Like as soon as you see it and you know what side you're on, you're like, it's overwhelming. And that's why maybe I can say, oh, I'm here for it. This is exciting because I already know. I already know what side I'm on. I already accepted the fact that one day this guy is going to die. Like I'm dying. Every day I'm dying. And that's why I said I'm not living for this life. I'm living for the next one. Like I don't whether it's a Nephilim coming through a portal and biting my head off, or I die from cancer at 65 because I smoked cigarettes like a chimney driving truck. Like, I'm gonna die, and the final destination is the same no matter how I die. And so, like, I'm so much at peace with it when you come to realization, and you're like, wow, the Nephilim are returning. It's just like, oh well, I'm at peace with it.
It's a Jerry Marzinski idea of taking agency of your own life. Like the people that suffer with schizophrenia and don't understand that it is entities, the schizophrenia will get worse. They'll spiral, and it'll lead to their. He actually, an interesting statistic: psychoanalysis or psychologists like him and the schizophrenic patients have similar statistics for suicide. That's where it leads to. But yeah, once you realize, once you're aware and you're able to take inventory and take account of yourself, you have that agency now where it's like, well, now I can actually be proactive. Even though, if Nephilim come to my property, I'm like shooting with an AR. Like, it might not be, but it gives me
do
peace.
nothing, but you can try.
Yeah. We need like that sword that that they used to cut off Goliath's head. You need Nephilim technology. But shout out to Rife Technology, because we're
we might have a direct energy weapon. I just want to say, man, if it's going to be Nephilim, please at least let and as Nephilim Death Squad, I would like a joint. Like, please let us take one out. Just one out on our way in. Just
Put
to
it
have
right
that
here,
moment.
right on the wall.
That's it. Because if not, then the name means nothing. Look, speaking of dying, I know Tony has got the flu or something. He doesn't know. He doesn't go to doctors. He has no idea what he has. So I want to respect his time. Tony, thank you so much, dude. This has been like genuinely awesome. Awesome conversation. And I just, you kind of were the spark for the inception of this show. And
That's
so
crazy.
we've come full circle.
Well,
and Tony, before we go, let him know. Go. So I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. Go, Tony. Go. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Dude.
I was just gonna say I appreciate you guys inviting me on the show, and I think it's crazy that my show, the way this show started, I think it's crazy, and I think you guys give me too much credit for stuff. I just sit behind a microphone, talk to people, and talk out loud, But I appreciate you guys bringing me on, and I wish I don't know. I hope I did good for you, because I feel like being sick, I wasn't able to hit a grand slam or something, but hopefully I did okay. I tried.
You hit multiple grand slams, dude. You crushed.
I was fully invigorated. I loved it. Before you go, tell them where they could find you, and if you would, we've never done this before, but leave us out on a prayer on the way out, because I feel like that's pretty important. Haven't seen it. I don't even care if people think this is a Christian show. I already told you what I think about my fans. If you would, Tony.
Yeah, no problem. That's fine with me. That's actually, I think, might be the first time that somebody's asked me for that, but that's cool. I like that. Yeah, you can find me, theconfessionalspodcast.com, on any podcast playing app. That's the genesis of what people know me from. I am trying to enthusiastically and entrepreneurially move Merkel Media in the direction of the next level of everything. And so we're trying to make we are making documentaries, and we are making movies. And I'm trying to work out, the best way to bring more and more podcasts onto the scene that makes sense for everybody. That's the biggest thing. But yeah, I'm just trying to create stuff. So I'm a big Tim Pool fan. I enjoy watching Tim Pool a lot. Actually, I respect the guy a ton. And he always talks about changing culture and moving culture. And when he started talking about that stuff and doing what he's doing, I was like, well, I'm not Tim Pool, but I have a little podcast and a little media company. Let me try. So I'm sorry, I'm losing it for a second. Give me a second here.
Some water, dude. Take some water.
If I might interject, I do know Tim Pool. I do respect him for what he's built, man. But I think you're, as far as moving culture, he's not a culture mover. He's something else. He's a great business dude, but you're doing it right from my vantage point, from my perspective. Keep doing what you're doing.
I wouldn't, as somebody who's been listening to Tim Pool, I don't look at you as being not lower than that situation at all.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I've been to Tim Pool's castle a few times now, and I'll be going back a few times this year for different things, mainly whenever we drop a film to do Pop Culture Crisis, I imagine. But I personally have a lot of respect for the guy. I like him a lot. And so when he started doing that and talking about that and stuff, I was like, let me try. And so I appreciate you guys saying that, though, even though you're just saying that. You're not.
No, I'm not. I don't say anything I don't mean, Tony.
That's true. I do know that. But all right, let's wrap this thing up and lead us out in a prayer here. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for having these guys invite me onto their show and just have a genuine conversation about whatever we came to our minds, Lord. As per tradition, that's where you typically move the most, is when you allow us as believers in you just to speak freely and let the Holy Spirit do what the Holy Spirit does. And Lord, I trust that whatever was said today was done to glorify you, and anything that might have been over the line that it was not of you, Lord, I pray that you delete that from people's memories so it doesn't do anything of ill will towards you and your kingdom building, Lord. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to their audience. Thank you for these two guys coming and listening to my show and starting their show. Lord, the ripple effect is astounding. And I pray that those who have planted seeds and threw stones in the water, that the ripples hit me and started me off on this journey. And now I'm doing the same, that they do the same for the next generation, Lord. And that this ripple effect just keeps going further and further out. And that there are shows that are just too many that we can count, that we can't even count them all, that have some kind of stemming from shows that came well before me. Lord, I pray that throughout all that you're glorified in one way or another. We don't need to do it the way it's always been done. We're learning that. And we're just being open vessels for you, that you come and use us the way you want to use us for the generation that's before us now. Help us understand the generation that's before us now. And so that we can deeper impact their lives, reach them, so that more people can come to you. And that ultimately we have an army for those end of days. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Tony,
I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm not kidding you. Right at the end there, did it look bright on the, I don't know if anybody was watching.
I had my head down.
Like I noticed the light fluctuation.
Did you notice that?
I did notice the light fluctuation.
Wow! David, you piece of crap, David. You had your eyes open during the prayer.
No,
incredible.
Dude, I had my eyes closed, but I could sense that it was getting brighter. I thought my light was.
Hey, let's look at the chat.
Funky.
Did they see that?
Did anybody see that? That's incredible.
I kind of wrapped it up because I wanted to see. Like I got shivers. Like
I thought it was my light. I thought my light was getting screwed up.
I got shivers because I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's an angel in my presence!" Like I literally, it got.
Oh come on!
Like
I was thinking crazy shit too.
My eyes are closed, and it got so bright behind my eyelids. I was like, "There's something lighting up the room right now."
Wow!
Oh, that's so wild. That's so wild.
Wow.
That's incredible.
My God. Oh,
I don't even know how to.
That's just
I don't
funny.
know how to end this.
I don't know.
I'm glad you had that experience too, because that
Dude,
I was
bizarre.
Like, I wanted to wrap it up, open my eyes, and be like, "What's up, Michael?" You know.
Okay, this is my thought process was my light is doing a thing, and then I kind of, man, I don't even want to say. I know we say crazy shit on this show all the time, but I felt like my face. I felt like I was going to be touched on my face.
Whoa!
Like it shivered me to the point that I was nervous. I was nervous. I was. Wow.
Man, that's wild.
All
right, guys. Thanks for listening.
Before.
Yeah. We'll see. I guess we'll see you next week. Thank you, Tony. See you guys.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real. You can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see. You got them. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of